Otherwise, I am going to turn it over to Mary and Bob. Bob Frigo is the Associate Director of the Kernodle Center for Service Learning and Community Engagement at Elon University. Mary Morrison is the Assistant Dean of Campus Life and the Director of the Kernodle Center for Service Learning and Community Engagement. And so welcome everyone, and thank you, Bob and Mary. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our presentation. Before I begin, I really want to thank Leslie and Irving and all the members of the Campus Compact staff for providing this opportunity to us. I think now more than ever, we need to support each other. We need to be sharing best practices. And so I'm excited about today, and I really want to thank our North Carolina Campus Compact for providing this opportunity. It's important for you to remember while we're going through our presentation that this is a decades-long process. We did not just start yesterday working to embed civic engagement into the DNA of our institution. However, the work that we've done very recently, I think, was important and necessary as the university has embarked on their 2030 strategic plan. And I think the work that we're going to discuss today, I think really made a difference about how this work showed up in the university's strategic plan. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the abstract of our workshop. We will discuss our experience with embedding our work on the departmental, divisional, and institutional levels. So all three of those levels. And we're hoping that this is going to be useful to you. I know this meeting is being recorded and the slides will be available to you. And we're also looking forward to hearing about your experiences. So Bob's going to talk a little bit about the framework that we're using today.
Sure. We're going to focus on our attempt to embed civic engagement on 3 different levels here at Elon. And that is the university level, the division level, and we are currently housed in the Division of Student Life, so that's the division that we'll speak about, and then our department level as well. And so really the presentation is going to focus on those 3 segments. And so while we certainly will have time for Q&A at the end, we're going to pause after a break in each of those sections and just give folks a moment if there's Q&A about that particular section before we move on. We are so appreciative that you joined us today. We're sorry about this format. We had really hoped that this was going to be much more sort of engaging in person, but we're going to do our best. So again, if you have questions, just know that we are going to stop in between each section as well as have those at the end. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next slide. And Mary's going to talk about our university structure to begin with for civic engagement.
And I do want to remind the group that we're using civic engagement really in a very broad way. It's an encompassing term. It's an umbrella term that we're really using here. So what I want to talk about is some of the infrastructure that's been built over the last 10 to 15 years. And we have about 6 different groups that are thinking and working together around civic engagement. And the first would be our Council on Civic Engagement, which has been in existence for about 14 years. And it's faculty and staff co-chaired. There's always a faculty member and a staff member co-chairing this committee. And from its inception, that's the way that it's been. It's representative of a lot of different programs and departments across campus. And it's made up of faculty, staff, and students. The group meets once a month, and we do a plan of work every year. This is the group that created our civic action plan. We're in the process of revising our civic action plan. So this is meant to be, again, a pan-university committee that's talking monthly about civic engagement. One of the structures that we have at Elon are the faculty fellow programs. So we have a faculty fellow for civic engagement. This is a faculty member that gets one course release each semester to focus and redirect some of their energy to university-wide civic engagement activities. So it's always the faculty fellow who co-chairs the Council on Civic Engagement, and then there have been a variety of staff members that have partnered with that faculty fellow. Currently, I'm co-chairing with our faculty fellow for civic engagement, Carrie Eves, that Civic Engagement Council. So they do some additional programming above and beyond what they would do if they were a faculty member in the political science department, for example. We have another faculty fellow that's focused on academic service learning and community engagement. We added community engagement to that role and responsibility because we're very, committed to academic service learning. Again, that's part of an Elon education. It's one of the 5 Elon experiences. But we're also looking at other ways that faculty members are engaged in the community beyond a service learning pedagogy. So that's going to be sort of some new territory that this faculty fellow is going to take on. Their role, again, it's a 4-year term. They get one course release each semester, and they're responsible for identifying and supporting faculty members who want to use service learning pedagogy in the classroom or some other kind of community engaged work as part of their academic curriculum. They offer individual consultations, monthly lunch and learns, and they encourage faculty to do presentations and research. So both these faculty fellow roles are really crucial. Pam Kaiser was our first faculty fellow. Some of you may have known her and remember her. She really was the first faculty fellow on campus, and many other departments across the university, and particularly in the Division of Student Life, now have faculty fellows that work with them specifically in their offices. So it's an interesting model, and it's one that's worked well at Elon. We have the Elon Political Engagement Work Group, again, faculty and staff co-chaired. That would be Carrie Eves and Bob Frigo at this time, and their real focus is on getting students to and faculty and staff as well, but really getting students to register to vote and to actually vote. And they have a huge emphasis on voter education. So they've got a robust program planned for the fall since it's a presidential year, but even on non-presidential election years, they continue to do the Active Citizens series to educate students about the issues that local officials, state officials, and national leaders are focusing on. So it's a really active, robust group, faculty, staff, and students all engaged together around thinking about Elon's political engagement.
And I think just to add to that, Miss Mary had added some historical context. This group was formed in 2015 as a result of one of the Division of Student Life annual priorities to prepare the university for the 2016 election. And we have chosen to remain active each and every year. I think one of the challenges are when these work groups only assemble for a midterm or presidential election, but we meet every month, every year. And so that group's been active since 2015.
Well, and I would say that we are, I think almost all universities that receive any kind of federal funding are required to offer voter registration as part, and we had always done that. It just hadn't been as obvious and clear. So this made it obvious and clear. And I will say that they have established themselves as a nonpartisan group. They really have held on to that nonpartisan reputation on our campus.
Mary?
Yes.
Before you move on, someone is asking, how do those two fellows work together? Do they work together? How are they similar? How are they different? Sort of what's that distinction, if you could clarify that more?
You know, that's a great question, and one that we've just hired 2 new faculty fellows, and they asked that same question. And it has been a little bit separate, but the 2 new faculty fellows have said, we want to work together. Our work is overlapping. So there's always been kind of a, you know, collegiality there, but I have not seen them really work hand in glove. And that is a goal that our 2 new faculty fellows have expressed. And so I do see a lot more collaboration between those 2 positions.
Good question.
Thanks, Mary.
Should I move on?
Yes, I think that answered it.
Great, thank you for that question. So the Academic Service Learning Advisory Committee, again, in order to graduate from Elon, you must complete 2 of the 5 experiential learning requirements. Those include service, leadership, research, internship, and study abroad. You must complete 2 of those. So the Academic Service Learning Advisory Committee oversees service learning designated courses. They identify faculty members who want to teach service learning courses. And then they also help support those faculty. And there's a broad representation of faculty from all the different schools and not every department, but every basic division, like the College of Arts and Sciences, School of Communication, Business. And then I had been previously the only staff member serving on that committee, but Tammy Cobb is going to be joining us as the Associate Director for Community Partnerships in this coming year. So it's predominantly a faculty group that is really trying to maintain the academic standards of excellence with the experiential learning requirement. But again, that committee is broadening out to look more at community engaged work and faculty that are doing community engaged work. They give leadership to service learning in their areas. And then finally, the Kernodle Center Advisory Committee, which again is made up of faculty, staff, students, and community partners, a representative group from all of those different constituencies. And they're crucial to the work of the Kernodle Center. We try to meet at least twice a year. When we're thinking more about our strategic plan, we meet more frequently. But we utilize that group to give us feedback, and they've given us great feedback. They are good people to help us think through the kind of work that we need to be doing, and, you know, giving us some feedback about what we need to stop doing and what we should start doing and who else we should include. So it's a crucial group for our operation. So those are the 6 groups that we have cultivated over the years. There is some overlap, but there's not a tremendous amount of overlap.
I think this is a good time to pause and see if there are any additional questions about the structure. And so thank you so much for someone who submitted that question about the faculty fellows working together. But we'll take a moment to pause before we go on to the next section to see if there are any more structural questions.
One of the questions, Russ from Elizabeth City is asking, is there a diagram showing the interplay of all these campus groups?
No. But that's a good idea.
Great idea. Great idea.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because we have tried to come up with something visual that explains Elon Volunteers, for example, which is our co-curricular work. And then we've tried to come up with a visual to help explain like all of this university structure. And we just haven't been satisfied with anything that really genuinely explains how this works. But you know, you've challenged me to take that on one more time. But we really don't have a visual.
Russ says, I totally get it. He was hoping he could copy what you're doing.
Well, you know what, I'll tell you what, please feel free to take any of these ideas and use them on your campus. And we are really open to any great feedback that we can get. And other people, if you have diagrams that work, we'd love to see that. It just got to be so messy and complicated. It started to not make any sense.
Mary Margaret from UNC Chapel Hill is asking, how do you select membership for the groups, such as the council and advisory committee? Are some of them by appointment, maybe the student body president, you know, those sorts of things?
Great question, Margaret. So with the Council on Civic Engagement, again, that's been a group that's been functioning for over 10 years. And so there were certain people that kind of had regular spots on the council. But we've also had some people that have asked to serve on the council. And so this is not a group that has to go through the academic council to be approved. This is a kind of a committee that functions that isn't like in the faculty handbook. So we're free as the two co-chairs. If somebody requests to serve on the advisory committee, we're free to say, well, yes, we'll accept that. Now we do have a representative from student government, a student representative from student government on the committee. And we also have our Newman Civic Fellow that is selected every year who serves on the committee. And Leslie serves on the committee because she is here locally and we want the benefit of her wisdom and experience. But that's one that has, a lot of flexibility. The Academic Service Learning Committee is much more structured. We are in the academic handbook, and our current faculty fellow is working to make sure that all of the positions outlined in the faculty handbook are filled. We have had a couple of positions that were not filled. And then he is working with the chair of the faculty council to see if we can also make some additional ad hoc members just to strengthen the number of people serving on that Academic Service Learning Advisory Committee. So those are two different committees, and they're just following kind of different rules. And I don't know, Bob, do you have a certain way that you get people on the Elon political engagement work group?
Yeah, that is a combination. I would say about, right now we're a little bit staff and student heavy. And so there's always the faculty and staff co-chair. There are some student leadership positions. The executive vice president of SGA is always a part of that group, as well as our student director for civic engagement. And then our two Elon Votes coordinators who also serve as Andrew Goodman Foundation fellows. And then we also have staff that represent a variety of offices across campus. And so our charge for next year is to increase our faculty reach with that group as well. So that's how that group is structured. And then our Kernodle Center Advisory Committee has relatively equal ratio of community partners, of faculty, of staff, and then students. And then the three students who happen to sit on that advisory committee are the three senior student leaders in our co-curricular service learning operation. So that's the makeup of that group as well.
All right, Bob and Mary, you're stimulating a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to combine a few of them. So one of them, someone asked about the slides. Yes, we'll be sharing those afterwards. And then someone is asking, how are fellows appointed?
Great question.
And stipends. Are there stipends with any of these positions?
Well, first of all, they get one course release a semester, and that is significant. Their course load is reduced by one course a semester, and so that is their compensation. They do have some budget so that they can do some programming like these lunch and learns and that kind of thing, and they've supported our networking lunch, which is Tammy Cobb works with our community partners, and we have a semesterly lunch where community partners and faculty to get together to talk and figure out if they want to, have a relationship for academic service learning. So they have some budget, but that compensation is really that one course release. So the way that they are hired is the Academic Service Learning Advisory Committee interviews and hires the faculty fellow for academic service learning and community engagement. That recommendation has to be approved, however, by the provost. And then the Council on Civic Engagement, that faculty fellow is interviewed by the council, and we put that name forward, and again, it has to be approved by the provost. So we've never had anybody not be approved, but I suppose the provost could say, I don't want that person, but that's never happened, but it could happen, I suppose, because it is a commitment on the part of the department to have that course release, and the provost has to be comfortable with that. It's a university level position, and so the provost has to be comfortable with that individual as well.
Yep.
And Mary, is there, go ahead,
there's
Bob.
there's a university-wide call for each of those positions, so it's completely open access, and they each serve the equivalent of a presidential term. It's a 4-year commitment.
Great. And so is there some place that we could direct folks who are asking about, they want to see those, basically the job description for the fellows?
No.
They're not posted publicly right now, but if our email addresses will be at the end of this presentation. So if you'd like to see a copy of the job description for either or for both, we're happy to send those along to you, but those don't live anywhere right now, but we're happy to share those with you.
Great. All right, we're going to take these last 2 questions because apparently this slide is really engaging people, so that's great.
It's going to be the dull slide, so that's interesting. So.
So Mary, when you said there's not much overlap, the question is, did you mean in the membership, or were you talking about responsibilities?
Well, I would say there's not a ton of overlap in responsibilities either. Not in membership and not in responsibilities. And but I guess I want to say is Elon is an extremely collaborative university. I have been so amazed by how much collaboration. So it's not like people don't know each other. And so there are, and when we get into talking about the university strategic plan, I mean, everybody's invited to all of these different meetings, and it's very inclusive. And so it's not as siloed as you might think, which is typical for most universities where there's these huge silos. But I would say there's not a huge amount of overlap in the responsibilities of these groups. Of course, the Elon Political Engagement Group has more overlap with the Civic Engagement Council because we are really the sponsoring organization for that work group. But yeah, not tons of overlap.
And that might sort of go along with this next question. And so they're really asking, are many of, so I think this goes back to your point about being collaborative. Really, they're wondering, are you all the ones who are basically initiating all of these councils? Or does the university really have an ethic of sort of initiating these types of councils? It's kind of like, are you all taking the lead in creating these sort of structures, or is it maybe in the culture or in the way things are?
The Council on Civic Engagement was definitely in place before I arrived on campus. So that was 15 years ago now. So as was the Academic Service Learning Advisory Committee. So both of those groups were already established, and they were established by the president, the provost, and the vice president for student life. So those were established by upper administration. What I will say is that, we have been very fortunate to have both a President Lambert, and now President Book, and provosts, Provost House and Provost Velati, and student life vice presidents, because our department reports up through the Division of Student Life, Smith Jackson and John Dooley, phenomenally, personally committed to community and civic engagement. And I don't think that's an accident. I think it is something that has always been a deeply held value of Elon, when it was Elon College, now that it's Elon University. So I do think that it helps to have people who have a personally deeply held value around this work. But it's also not an accident that we've hired people that have this deeply held value.
Yeah, I think just to add, I think we have tremendous support, as Mary said, at the presidential level, the provost level, vice presidential levels, dean levels, all with folks with many things in their portfolios, and some of the language we like to use is that, but the staff in our office are the ones who wake up every day thinking about this work solely. And so I think it is a wonderful combination of support on a variety of levels with a really deeply committed staff who are working collaboratively with faculty, staff, and students and community partners to drive this work and continue that momentum every day. So it's a great perfect storm of a lot of support on a variety of levels.
Great. Okay, this will be our last question. I know it isn't the focus of your presentation, so maybe I can type the link into the chat. But Tiffany at A&T is asking, you talked about those 5 experiential requirements, yeah, and service learning, leadership, and study abroad are part of it. Can you just list the 5 again, and then I'll send the link to what that expectation is at Elon?
Yes, and I do encourage you to go to the Kernodle Center website, because if you look on the left-hand column, our website, thanks to Kyle Anderson, is extremely robust and full of information, probably way too much. But a lot of the details of what you're asking us about can be found on the Kernodle Center website. But for the Elon experience, the experiential learning requirement, the 5 areas are service, leadership, research, internship, and study abroad. And there is another committee, God bless the committees, that works, all of us get around the table. We have our faculty partner and our staff partner for each one of these experiences. And that is yet another group of people that they're solely focused on this experiential learning requirement.
Great, thanks.
Well, I'm going to try to breeze through this as quickly as possible, talking about the university level planning. I will say, again, our Boldly Elon plan is on our Elon University website. And it's just been rolled out. This is brand new. Boldly Elon, our strategic plan for 2030. And again, Elon is an extremely inclusive community. There were many, many meetings. If you didn't feel like you were included in the strategic plan, then you were hiding under a rock somewhere. And we deployed our entire Kernodle Center staff to try to be at as many of these meetings and to be strategically placed around the room. The staff will tell you that I have this value. Whenever we're in a meeting, we may be small, but we're everywhere. And so we don't clump up with each other at meetings. We spread out and we make sure that we're listening to what everybody's saying and contributing where we can. But this Boldly Elon also had some strategic subcommittees, and both Bob Frigo and Tammy Cobb were invited to serve on those subcommittees. So again, our staff, we are trying to be where people are having these conversations. And then in addition, the good work of my colleagues, Bob and Tammy, were recognized. Not every staff member was involved, by the way, on these subcommittees. So it was really a tip of the hat to their great work that they were invited to serve on these subcommittees. And then there was active involvement. All those 6 groups that we've spent some time talking about, what was beautiful is you'd show up to a meeting and I didn't have to say a word. There was a faculty member that spoke on behalf of the importance of community and civic engagement. There was another staff member from another department that stood up and spoke about the importance of community engagement because they felt the commitment themselves. There are 4 sections to our strategic plan. You can see it there: learn, thrive, connect, and rise. We see ourselves in all 4 of those sections in one way or another, but it's really connect that where our work is primary. So I do want to talk a little bit about some of the highlights. You can see there: partner with communities to transform the future. Just want to read one of the statements out loud to you. During this decade, we will develop partnerships to advance healthy, prosperous, and socially just communities in Alamance and Guilford counties and around the world. So we have a very strong footprint in Alamance County. Our law school is located in Guilford County, And we have a strong relationship with our Global Education Center as we think about, how students are engaging with community, both domestically and internationally. And then again, tied to the mission of the university, fulfill our mission to prepare students to be global citizens and informed leaders motivated by concern for the common good. That's straight out of the Elon mission statement. So again, a very strong connection to the work of the Kernodle Center. And then if we move down to the objectives that were highlighted, I just want to point out two or three of the objectives. The first one being, a real charge to the Kernodle Center. Prepare every student to participate in community and civic engagement, gaining essential skills and an understanding of their civic responsibilities. So community and civic engagement, and again, here we're using civic engagement in a very broad way, community and civic engagement, and that is right up our alley. And you'll see that reflected when Bob talks about our department strategic plan. And then deepen partnerships with the Alamance Burlington school system and create business incubator and solution hubs. We are talking about those faculty members that are engaged with community members who are in small businesses, and how can we help support those efforts?
Mary,
yes.
Cherie has raised her hand, and so I'm going to allow her to talk. Dr. Davis, you're unmuted now. Dr. Davis, are you there? Okay, that doesn't seem to be working. So if you could enter your question in the Q&A, that would be great. Thanks. Yeah, Mary will look and see if she is able to type it in.
Okay, and then we'll pause at the end of this section, so we're nearly there as well, so that's perfect timing.
So if we could go to the next slide. So our Vice President for Student Life, when all of this was happening around our strategic plan, and again, it was about a 1.5 year process, he really challenged those of us in the Kernodle Center to put forth basically a vision statement or a vision paper about what being a national model for civic and community engagement could look like at Elon University in 2030. And he said, I'd really like to have that in about 5 days. So we put our shoulder to the wheel. The entire staff gathered around, and we wrote a vision document about what civic and community engagement could look like at Elon. And we submitted that to the overarching Boldly Elon committee. We did vet this document and get feedback and make amendments with our Civic Engagement Council colleagues. And we did get a fair amount of feedback, and there was some wordsmithing that happened. And we ran it past our Academic Service Learning Advisory Committee, where again, a lot of feedback and a lot of wordsmithing. So we were able to submit this to the committee, the overarching committee. And again, remember, Bob and Tammy were working on some subcommittees. And a lot of the language, I'm going to be honest with you, did show up in the university strategic plan. We probably wouldn't have been as bold if we didn't have the backing of our Vice President for Student Life, who has been a significant champion of this work. And we got the call and we responded. And so it was great. I do know other groups across campus submitted their own white papers. I know one group submitted something around mentoring. There were other groups that did this, but we heard the call and we acted. And I think it really
just to add on that, if you know that your institution is preparing to do the background work on your next strategic plan, you may not get the ask. However, it may well be worth your while to put together a white paper vision document to help inform what your university-wide strategic plan becomes. we were surprised how much of this language did show up in our plan. So even if you don't get the ask, I think the lesson learned is that when you know that that timeline is happening, it is worthwhile to put something together for the committee that ultimately crafts this plan, because that can be very advantageous.
Bob, Amanda's asking, is this vision statement on your Kernodle website?
It is not, but we are happy to, again, we'll have our email address at the end. We chose not to post this for a whole host of reasons, but we're more than happy to share this out.
Great, thanks. And anyone else, if you have questions, please be sure to enter them in the Q&A. Thanks.
So we'll go ahead and pause here if there are any additional questions on the university level before we move on to the Division of Student Life level.
I think we're ready.
Yes,
Right.
no questions.
All right, let's go ahead and do that. So as we move on, so I think one interesting thing is about 2 years ago, simultaneously, the university was crafting the foundations of its strategic plan, as was the Division of Student Life, as was the Kernodle Center. So about 2 years ago, we were very much living in strategic world as we have been since, but simultaneously all these things were happening. And so it was interesting, there's no doubt about that. So the Division of Student Life assembled a group of about 8 individuals representing all different ranks in the division, and has been meeting for the past 1.5 years. And so initially we were waiting a little bit for some clarity on what the university plan was going to look like, again, as we were writing these simultaneously. But ultimately, the university plan has a 5-year time frame. Our division strategic plan has a 5-year time frame. So we were just finishing up the 2015 to 2020 strategic plan. And so what you see before you, we will not be able to share out widely, unfortunately, because our entire division hasn't seen this yet. So we're giving you a few snapshots. It is currently with our Vice President's Council in Student Life, and it will go out to our entire division later on this summer, although they have seen various versions of this over the past year. But ultimately, we have a plan that includes the following themes. And a number of these themes are very prominent in the Boldly Elon plan. And so there is some definite connection between the university plan and our division plan. And those 7 themes focus on mentoring relationships. They focus on leadership and skill development. They focus on inclusive excellence, wellness and well-being, a vibrant residential campus, civic engagement, and divisional excellence. So those 7 themes form the infrastructure of our division-wide 5-year strategic plan. And so we have been gathering feedback from our division over the past 1.5 years, at a division retreat, at division meetings, for ideas, for concepts, for feedback. And that's ultimately how these 7 got created. Now, the one that focuses on civic engagement really mirrors that preparation language that we see in Boldly Elon about preparing every student to engage with communities and developing this next generation of informed leaders that were motivated by the common good, who will help both strengthen communities and shape democracies. And so when these themes went out to the division, we gathered some data, and ultimately we did this in March to get some feedback from our colleagues in the division. About 100 of us and about 67 folks responded, and we really wanted to get a sense on, do you see yourself in these themes in this plan? How does this plan energize and motivate you? What's missing, and what other comments that do you have? And so if you take a look at the themes, the 7 themes on the bottom, the vast majority of folks in the division clearly saw themselves over 80% in things like mentoring and things like wellness and well-being. And then we started to see fewer and fewer numbers down to civic engagement, and 52% of our colleagues saw themselves in that work. And so we knew that this was very important work on the presidential level, on the division level, And so what was a challenge, I think, for us in that world was that a lot of departments in student life had relied on our office and our infrastructures that we mentioned previously to deliver this work. And so our message, what we really heard loud and clear, was that civic engagement was going to be a part of this plan, but we needed to do a better job of articulating how our colleagues across the Division of Student Life can start to really connect with this work in things like Residence Life, the Center for Leadership, and Wellness. And so what we ultimately did was we put together some areas of focus with some broad language that really illuminated some pathways for connection. And so those three areas of focus are a charge and a challenge to our colleagues. In addition to our office, how do we start to incorporate things like civic learning, service, civic responsibility, and community partnerships across our division, beyond just one or two offices in the committee structure that we have? We have a very robust deliberative dialogue presence on our campus, and we host 2 formal dialogues, one each semester, but it's happening on a regular basis in academic classrooms. And so we chose for the second area of focus, how do we expand and deepen dialogue opportunities for students to really ultimately engage with difference in terms of beliefs that differ from individual student perspectives, to increase the understanding of multiple perspectives and discussing things like the common good, this elusive part of our university mission statement that we started to unpack. And the last area of focus, again, to really increase the spread of the work that we do and make it applicable to other departments, is how do other departments start to engage with community organizations and increase opportunities around current local, state, national, and international issues. And so that language, was intentionally created so other folks could see themselves in that work. And so ultimately, right now, the division's strategic plan the final draft was submitted to our Vice President's Council last month. It is currently with that council for revision. And then that will go out to our entire division later on this summer for launch this fall. So we'll pause there for a moment before we go on to the departmental level to see if anyone has any questions about that divisional plan or about that divisional structure before we head to department.
No questions.
All right, we will go ahead and move on then. All right, now we're down to Kernodle Center level. So we just crafted, it's tentatively set as a 7-year plan, which we didn't start out doing. But Mary and I we did some visits about 2 years ago, and we really are thankful to our colleagues at places like Duke, at Chapel Hill, like NC State. And so we did some formal listening sessions and did some campus visits to find out how our sister offices at those institutions had put their plan together and what those plans entailed, what they would do differently and what they would certainly keep. And we had a number of conversations with colleagues at network meetings. So we really harvested the expertise of folks in our state, because we have some folks doing some really amazing work. So there was some great aspirational pieces out there. So that's how we started about 2 years ago to start to put the bones together. And so where we sit this summer is really 2 years in, is we had a chance to put a plan together that I'll talk about in a second, but it also gave us a chance to look at some structural pieces of our work. And so over the last month and a half, while we've all been meeting as a staff remotely during this time of COVID, we had a chance to refresh our mission statement. We took a look at some of the new language in the university plan and very much wanted to make sure that we are in sync with where we are as an institution. And so while this mission statement, the bones of it is very similar to the statement that we've had in place for about 10 years right now, it gave us a chance to refresh that mission statement. And so the one that you see before you is our current refresh statement. It also gave us a chance to create a vision statement, which we previously did not have. And so that whole concept of advancing a national civic engagement model was taken again from the university document And this idea of student preparation was very much embedded in the university document as well. So our vision statement, again, is very much in alignment with where we are as an institution.
Bob, I just want to mention, so we have 6 professional staff members in the Kernodle Center. And, you know, Bob took some leadership for this, the overarching plan and process for our Kernodle Center strategic plan. And, you know, he laid out a time frame and everything. And that might be something, Bob, if you're comfortable sharing that time frame. I thought it was a really interesting thing. But we had 2 other staff members, Tammy Cobb and Sarah Williams, who led us through this mission, vision, values part of the strategic plan. So I would say, you know, it was interesting that every person on the staff, you know, contributed, but also gave different levels of leadership to this process. So both the mission statement, the vision statement, and then the upcoming values statements were all led by Tammy and Sarah as part of this whole process. So I think, you know, it was really a full team effort to get to this point.
Good point. Thank you for adding that. I appreciate that. We also had a chance to look at creating some values that shape our work. And so again, as part of this exercise, our colleagues, Tammy and Sarah, led us through a variety of values activities. And so we, in addition to our mission statement, now have a vision statement and a value statement. We also have an inclusion statement that our students actually created several years ago. So we now feel like we have a much more comprehensive package about articulating who we are and how we function. So the values were created as well. And so all that said, that was done in tandem with a strategic plan that right now, like I said, tentatively is slated to take us from 2020 to 2027. We broke it down into 4 different major themes, expand being one of those themes. And so what you're going to see, and this is just a sample snapshot of the first page, the first one lists an initiative. In this case, it's a very broad initiative about advancing the national civic engagement model that prepares all students to engage in local community. Again, very much taken from the boldly Elon plan. What we did is that, and I'll talk about this in a second, every one of these initiatives was informed by another document. So we very much did not create this plan in a vacuum. I'm going to give you a really interesting cross-section of where we pulled this information from in a moment. But you'll see for each one of these, in bold, you'll see the initiative. Underneath that, you're going to see the source, which is where the concept or idea originated from. And then you're going to see a time frame. And we spent a lot of time deciding what we want to tackle early, what is going to be a mid-range time frame, and then what do we want to do late in our 7-year rollout. And so, you know, it feels like this is draft 357. We spent a lot of time, a lot of staff time, being very transparent about this entire process and soliciting feedback from every member of our staff. Right now, our staff has done its due diligence, and it is with our Vice President for Student Life, our AVP for Student Life, and our 2 faculty fellows for feedback right now. We'll take their feedback and incorporate that in here, and then we'll have our near final draft of our document, and then the final vetting for that will go out in late June to our Kernodle Center Advisory Committee for their final comments before we ratify this and roll this out in August. But this is a snapshot of the first 4 initiatives. Ultimately, a lot of work went into preparing this plan. And so everything that you see a title here in gray is where the research came from. And so we have a whole range of documents here, from the Academic Service Learning Faculty Advisory Committee white paper, to our advisory committee themes, to our 2030 vision document, to white papers submitted by community and partnership subcommittees, to Kernodle Center. We had an external review report led by colleagues across the state. We did a stakeholder survey of community partners and faculty, staff, and students and alumni. And so ultimately, in a very painstaking process, what our staff did was we went through each one of the documents that you see lifted, or listed, I should say. We lifted out concepts and ideas that we thought were valuable and wanted to see in our plan. So we harvested the language in our current plan from all of these documents that really gave us a wonderful cross-section of, this was not 6 people sitting in a room who do this work every day, but we harvested a lot of voices from campus and community to ultimately put our document together. And so that led us to where we are right now with the plan that we currently have. Mary, any further comments on that?
No,
Okay.
that was, I mean, I think that if I were sitting on the other side of this and listening to the presentation, I do think that this preparation slide is really interesting because this really, we really did pull from like national groups and this external and internal review process that we went through. We were the first in the division to pilot our internal and external review process. I know many of you probably already have those kinds of things in place, but that's new to the division. But I think the thoroughness of our plan is reflected in the research that we did. And we will be creating a public document once we have gone through all the different vetting processes that Bob outlined. So eventually we will post this on our website.
Yep. And so that said, that really concludes the final section. And so we know that we built in some time for Q&A along the way, but, and our apologies, we know that was a lot of content, but again, certainly this presentation will be made available to you. And if you would like to see those additional documents, that vision document, the position descriptions for the faculty fellows, we have our email address in the final slide. You're more than welcome to reach out to us. But we really wanted to just open up the floor for questions and comments right now. And so thanks in advance to Leslie for helping us moderate this part. But anything that was not clear, anything that you're doing that you want to share out and let us know about best practices from your end. Again, we harvested a lot of our timeline and what we were doing based on our friends from around the states. One of the beauties of North Carolina Campus Compact is that folks are so willing to share ideas and thoughts and possibilities. And so we very much harvested that, and we want to do the same as well to be good colleagues.
Anybody has any questions, please enter them in the Q&A.
Or it could be that everyone left the building after 12 minutes to say, I am no longer going to be on this. I'd rather be outside in the sunshine.
Kimmy at Duke is saying thank you for the excellent presentation, but she's also noting that for those who do not know, Elon is now going to be the host of Bringing Theory to Practice. And so she's asking, how is this new partnership going to play into your strategic plan and structure?
Well, we're very excited that David Scobie is going to be hosted at Elon University. And I understand that he is going to be residing as a faculty in residence in one of our neighborhoods here on campus. You know, David has been a leader in this field for as long as I've been involved in it. And we're just really thrilled to have him come to Elon University and to North Carolina. So I think it remains to be seen exactly how we'll, you know, work with David. I will say my civic engagement co-chair hat makes me think he might be an interesting person to also include on that group, but that's not really my decision to make at this point. I think he's going to come and get settled, but we are very fortunate to have him in our state now. And I think it'll benefit all of us. And I know, Leslie, you know David very well, and I'm sure there'll be ways to incorporate him into our compact.
Yeah, this is a very exciting opportunity for all of us. Craig is asking, how are academic departments connected to all of this that you've been sharing?
So both the Civic Engagement Council and the Academic Service Learning Advisory Committee have representatives from different departments across the university. So, you know, they bring a lot of this back to their departments and are really ambassadors for the work in their departments and in their divisions. So, yeah, we've got faculty members really on our Kernodle Center Advisory Committee and those two other committees. And then these faculty fellows are also our liaison to the faculty world. And they are our bridge builders there. We also have a system in place at Elon where we have these community conversations once a month before faculty meetings on different topics. And those are held on a Friday afternoon right before the faculty council. And our staff, you know, staff members are included in those. And our staff really makes an effort to go to those meetings and sit with faculty members and learn with them. We also have a very strong Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Learning. And it was really funny when I first came to Elon, I noticed they were having some book groups and some conversations. And I remember calling up the director, Peter Felton, who was the director of the Center for Advancement of Teaching and Learning at the time. I remember calling him up and saying, you know, I'm a staff member. I see this is really more targeted toward faculty. You know, would it be possible for me to participate? And he said, are you kidding? He laughed out loud. He said, of course you can commit, you can participate. So our Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Learning is also very inclusive of staff joining with their faculty colleagues in that learning environment. And so our whole staff participates in those programs as well. So over the years, you know, we have developed strong relationships with our faculty colleagues through those various methods.
Great. There are a lot of people who are commending your efforts, including Patty Clayton, who says she supported a lot of folks in visioning, and she respects your careful design and all the thoughtfulness in the process. I see two more questions. Can you talk about how you secured an external reviewer? Was that through Campus Compact?
No. I mean, I think maybe Leslie, you made some recommendations for people who could be external reviewers. I don't know. I know.
Right, I remember that. Yeah.
You and John are in good communication with each other. John Dooley is our Vice President for Student Life. This is an initiative that's came out of the Vice President for Student Life. He had previously worked at Marquette University, and I think this was just part of their regular practice at Marquette, that departments in the Division of Student Life would be reviewed. And so the staff always says, it wasn't we volunteered, Mary, it's that you volunteered. And it was quite a process. We spent, oh my gosh, probably 4 months working through the document of internal review. And then that fall, we had our internal committee of colleagues at Elon that reviewed our work. And then we had 3 professionals outside of our institution visit for 2 or 3 days and interview people and, you know, read all of our materials, and they made very great suggestions. And so those were invited by our Division of Student Life.
Great, thanks, Mary. So here's an interesting one. How involved is the Kernodle family in the plannings of the Kernodle Center? And did you have to get them on board for any of your departmental initiatives?
Well, I have our little background of the history of our center's name. We are the John R. Kernodle Jr. Center for Service Learning and Community Engagement. And that their family endowed the center. And this was, again, before my time. Many of you know John Barnhill, and he had been the director of the Kernodle Center at one point, and during his time, he had worked with the Kernodle family to get that endowment. But so I think Dr. Kernodle passed away many years ago, and his wife, Esther Kernodle, is probably 99 or 100 years old at this point. But John Jr.'s wife, Lynn, is still active, and she and I just get together, probably once a semester and have lunch and a conversation. She is also an ad hoc member of our advisory committee. She's not always able to join us on that advisory committee, but she is a member of that advisory committee and a kind of a permanent member of the advisory committee. And she's just over the years, I mean, she was in nonprofit work herself in Greensboro for many years. And we just have established a really high level of trust. And so, yes, I do talk with her about things, but she's never had anything other than support for us. So she's been a great partner with us, and very much trusting the decisions that we make. But we're keeping her informed along the way. But she's caring now for Mrs. Kernodle, Esther Kernodle, and so her time is pretty well taken up. But we do try to have lunch, once a semester.
All right, there currently aren't any questions in either in the Q&A, and then I don't see it in the chat either. So anybody, if you've got any final questions, please submit those now. We'll wait a couple of seconds and see if anything comes in.
What I want to say is, first of all, we appreciate you coming to the webinar, but also we know that there are a lot of great ideas out there, and you all are also on your journey around embedding this work into the DNA of your campus. So we really would love to hear from you. If we were all in person, we would be having a lot more back and forth and sharing. That's one of the downsides of this format, but we really welcome any ideas or suggestions that you would have for us. And I certainly wrote down the one about we need a visual. So we want to thank you for coming today.
It looks like we have one more that just came in.
Okay.
Historically, why did a center to work with faculty not develop in academic affairs at Elon? What has been the role at CADL in working with the curriculum historically and currently?
Could you repeat that question, please? I want to make sure I got all parts of it.
Sure. Historically, why did a center to work with faculty not develop in academic affairs at Elon? And what has been the role of the Center for Academic Teaching and Learning in working with the curriculum historically or currently?
Yeah, I really think this is fascinating. There are very low walls between student affairs and academic affairs. Almost everything on this campus is done jointly between faculty and staff. The Vice President for Student Life reports directly to the provost. And so they meet on a weekly basis. And there are a fair number, Bob, something happened and Bob's gone away. That's why I'm answering all the questions. Something happened on his end technology-wise. So thank you, Bob.
Oh, and by the way, let me just jump in, Mary, because I know some folks are jumping off. Their emails are in the chat. So if you want to get in touch with Bob or Mary, please do that. Yeah. Mary, let me let you know that Patty wants to emphasize that she's talking about service learning and community engagement in the curriculum. What has been their role in SLICE in the curriculum? I guess she's asking, yes.
You mean the Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Learning?
Yes.
Oh, well, my goodness. They have been huge, educators and champions of this work for a very long time, and have always partnered with our faculty fellows to create programming and training and that kind of thing. And in fact, during these COVID times, they've become an even more important partner as we try to figure out how to do this work remotely. So, I mean, they are very involved with every aspect of this and have worked closely with our office and also with our faculty fellows. So, we couldn't ask for a better partner than the Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Learning.
Okay. Mary, thank you so much. I'm so sorry that Bob had to jump off. I think I speak for all of us when I say it is a real gift, honor, blessing to have folks in our state, such as Elon, who really are models for collaborative, thoughtful, intentional, really just